Welcome to WARNO Dev Blog number 8. Today we are getting a milestone Davout preview, namely of one of the divisions. The other division is coming next week, which suggests to me that Davout won't actually be arriving next week, as I think they'd be showing us both of them today if that was the plan. However, today we get to look at the 7th Panzer Division. Davout is named after the Iron Marshal, Louis Nicholas Davout, undoubtedly Napoleon's ablest lieutenant. Never defeated on the field of battle, Davout is remembered as the bane of the Prussians, which is most fitting with this milestone featuring Warno's Germans. Next we get a little bit of information about the Nationale Volks Army, or the NVA, or NVA, if you're feeling particularly German about it. East German's army was created in 1956 in response to the West Germans' rearmament and the foundation of the Bundeswehr a few months earlier. Although the KVP, or Barracked People's Police, was already an embryo of the army without saying so openly. Just like its West German counterpart, most of the cadre were former World War II Wehrmacht veterans, ideologically selected to suit the new communist regime. A 20,000 person strong, all-volunteer force at its creation, the NVA increased to over 170,000 with the introduction of mandatory conscription in 1962, in the wake of the Berlin Wall's construction. By 1989, the NVA's standing divisions amounted to 2 Panzer Divisions, 7 and 9, and 4 Motorisierte Suchen Divisions, 1, 4, 8 and 11, or MSD, as well as several smaller units, engineers, SAM helicopters, including Airborne Special Forces, Luftsturm Regiment 40, or 40, and 5 more MSD divisions, 6, 10, 17, 19 and 20, and an airborne regiment that could be raised from reservists in just 3 days. With its combination of old Prussian discipline and extreme loyalty to the communist regime, the NVA was regarded by friends, or indeed foes, as the most disciplined and best trained force among the Warsaw Pact nations, and for NATO among the toughest opponents to face in case of war. Even the Soviets recognized that fact, with some suspicion, which might be a reason why they granted the NVA much less of their modern weaponry than other WP armies such as Poland or Czechoslovakia. Thus, although divisional organization and TONE were based on Soviet ones, save for the parachute regiment, the NVA had to fight with much older equipment. NVA divisions were split between military districts, Militärbezirk 3 and 5, which would have become the 3rd and 5th Army in case of war, yet it is believed that they wouldn't have been allowed by the Soviets to act as an independent army, but instead been affected to Soviet ones. The 5th was in the north facing Northag, consisting of the 1 and 8th MSD and the 9th Panzer Division, while the 3rd was located in the southeast of Germany, facing off against Sentag with the 4th 11th MSD and the 7th Panzer Division. So, the 7th Panzer Division was formed in Dresden from the creation of the NVA in 1956 with the city's KPV mechanized detachment at its core. For 6 years, the division trained relentlessly to protect the peaceful life of citizens of the DDR, before the Cold War caught up with it for the first time. On October 1962, at the height of the Cuban Missile Crisis, the division was placed in combat alert, and draftees reaching the limit of their service were kept under arms for another month before being released. From 1961 to 1984, the 7th Panzer Division took part in no less than 10 major maneuvers alongside other Warsaw Pact members, as well as many national exercises. In the summer of 1968, the 7th Panzer and 11th MSD were earmarked for deployment in neighbouring Czechoslovakia as part of the Operation Danube, a Warsaw Pact intervention to quell the Prague Spring. But on August 20th, while ready to march, the order was countermanded and the division placed in reserve. While the 9th Panzer Division, facing the might of the British challengers in the north, had priority over T-72 allotment, the 7th Panzer Division only began receiving that model in 1987. By the end of the Cold War, barely 25% of the division's old T-55s had been replaced, leaving its Panzer Regiment with a mix of T-55s and T-72. The real question is, what can we expect in-game? Although organised along the same lines as a Soviet tank division, the 7th Panzer Division brings some specific features. In a few words, older equipment with better training over the board. 7th Panzer most distinctive feature lies in the nature of its tanks. T80 and still missing T62 are replaced here with the T72 and T55. More specifically, the NVA fielded a vanilla T72 and a T72M, as well as a T55A and modernised T55AM2 and the T55AM2B. The latter two here are identical, but with the B variant being able to fire the 9M117 Bastion ATGM. The NVA only ever received a dozen BMP-2s, which were all affected to the 9th Panzer Division. Therefore, 7th Panzer Division's main IFV is the BMP-1 SP2 with the Malyukta on the gun. They note the same model that is currently inappropriate for the Soviet BMP-1P. NVA attack helicopters were the Mi-24D and the Mi-24P variants. The only difference between the D variant and the current Soviet V1 is the former's inability to use the Kokon missiles, being instead restricted to the Falangia P older missiles, and the P variant on the other hand is quite different, removing the twin 23mm nose turret and replacing it with two side-mounted 30mm autocannons. Like the Soviet variants, it carries more modern missiles. Although the Mi-8 are in service with the NVA, the main helicopter workhorse is the Mi-2, used in both transport and recon roles. While some Soviet divisions used the improved ZSU-23 4M3 Beryusa, the 7th Panzer Division fields the older ZSU-23-4 Shilka. Instead of using the BM-21 Grad as divisional MRLS, as the Soviets do, the 7th Panzer Division fields the better Czechs RM-71s. Although they both fire 40-round salvos, the main difference is that the latter carries one extra salvo ready for reload. The Czechs-made heavy T-813 supply truck is also advantageously replacing the Soviet Ural 4320. Infantry RPG-7 doesn't feature the latest ammunition, hence the lesser but with more range RPG-7VL as the main ordnance. It should also be noted that while even the best equipped Soviet divisions hadn't enough self-propelled guns and had to still rely on old tow guns in 1989, the NVA equipped its two panzer divisions with SPG in priority, thus all the 7th Panzer Division's artillery will be entirely self-propelled. Air Force support includes loadouts of the Su-22M4, the MiG-21 PFM and the MiG-23MF. Currently missing units, but to be added later, are the SPG-9 Fire Support Squad, the Faggot and Kokon ATGM Infantry, and the PM-43 120mm mortar. They leave us with a quick note that it is all quiet on the Western Front. The West Germany and its 1st Division will be the topic of next week's dev blog, but they don't want to leave us without a few treats. Firstly, the US 8th Infantry's German arsenal has been increased with the Kann JPZ, standing for the Cannon Jagdpanzer. You will remember this from Red Dragon. A note, as spotted and reported by many people, the Alpha Jet was missing its ventral gun pod, and this has also been fixed, as you can see on this image. And that's the end of this week's dev blog. Thank you very much everyone for tuning in. Please do like, share and subscribe as always, and I'll see you all next week for dev blog number 9.